If you had only one final call left in your life, who would you dial? In Chesapeake Bay, on a mist-shrouded morning, an old man lies bound to a sinking boat. The Coast Guard has just destroyed his vessel, treating him as an intruder. No one asks who he is. But they don't know that in just 1 hour, a mysterious team of Navy SEALs will appear, ready to do what no one else dares. They haven't come for a mission. They've come for him. Who is he? What lies within the black box that drives an entire SEAL team to land and avenge an old man? This is the story of a veteran who, for nearly half a century, has kept a silent oath, an SOS signal only a chosen few can hear. And what secret compelled the Navy to act? Let's find out. All right, take a moment now to let us know where you're watching from and what time it is. Comment 1 if you want to keep listening to the story. We're thrilled to have you with us from around the globe. If there's one place you're compelled to return to, even when the whole world has forgotten it, would you have the courage to go? Matthew Reed has been going for nearly half a century. No one truly understands him. No one has ever asked why. Each morning, they only see his familiar figure moving slowly across the weathered Chesapeake dock. An old man, living alone in a small wooden house, clad in a faded canvas coat, his worn baseball cap pulled low, always clutching a chipped thermos whose paint has long since peeled away. The locals are used to seeing him. They pass by at the morning market, nodding out of habit. Sometimes they glance curiously at the antique boat he tirelessly repairs. But no one ever stops long enough to ask what occupies his thoughts. Perhaps they assume he's just an old man filling his empty hours. Yet Matthew Reed has never been lonely. That emptiness has never been accidental. His boat, Echo's promise, is all that remains of a life he could never abandon. Folks call it a ramshackle wooden vessel, but to Matthew, it's part of his flesh and blood. He didn't buy it. He rescued it. In 1975, when a decommissioned naval ship washed ashore in Virginia, people hurried to haul it away as scrap. But Matthew stayed behind. He saw what others couldn't, an unfinished promise. He carted those decayed planks home, night after night, patiently pried away the splintered wood, replaced each rusty bolt, straightened every warped frame. His hands hardened into calluses. Fresh cuts appeared before old wounds could heal. Yet he never complained, never uttered a single word of remorse. Each chisel stroke, each scrape of sandpaper was like a breath, reviving a piece of the past that had sunk too deep. He didn't rebuild the boat to sail away. He rebuilt it so memory wouldn't drift away. The townspeople whisper that he's obsessed. They say he lives forever in the past, that he has nothing left to anchor him to the present. But Matthew pays them no mind. He doesn't need their understanding. He only needs his boat. Echo's promise is not merely a vessel, it's his final companion, the resting place of secrets never spoken. His departures are ritualistic and unwavering. He doesn't fish, he doesn't hunt, he never brings company, just himself and the black wooden box, locked tight, resting on the deck beneath his feet. Year after year, he rows to the same coordinates, on the same date, at the same hour. The routine has become so familiar that no one questions it anymore. They assume it's old Matthew's thing, unimportant, nobody's business. But there was one person who asked, once. That was Emily Reed, his only daughter. As a child, she chased after him down to the dock, wondering why he always carried that wooden box. He sat her on a weathered crate, stroked her hair, and whispered, I still have an appointment to keep. Emily didn't understand. He offered no further explanation. From that day on, she never asked again. Instinct told her some secrets can only be unlocked by time. Matthew Reed is not one for words. His life has been lived in silence. Silent when he built the boat. Silent as he rowed to sea. Silent under the probing stares of passers-by. Yet inside, his mind never rests. Some nights he sits alone by the window, eyes fixed on the horizon, knuckles white around his empty thermos, as though clutching at something slipping just out of reach. He never weeps, but in those weary eyes lies an ocean of unsaid things. Perhaps every voyage is his own reckoning. Does he have the courage to honor his vow? Has the moment he's been waiting for arrived? Or is he merely fleeing memories he cannot erase? No one knows. And perhaps neither does he. Matthew Reed lives as if he and his boat have become one. Every crack in the hull, every patch of peeling paint reflects a scar etched deep within his soul. He never lets go of the wheel. He never allows anyone near that black box. He never forgets the appointment he swore to fulfill. He goes without asking for understanding. And perhaps the only thing he truly needs is to reach the place where he made his promise. To those who can no longer speak for themselves, there are secrets that need not be locked in a safe. They only need to be secured in the heart of the one who keeps the promise. Matthew Reed understood that better than anyone. For 47 years, he has guarded that black wooden box as if it were the final breath of an unfinished life. It has always been there, lying silently on the deck of Echo's promise, never leaving his side for a single day. It is part of him, an inescapable obsession. The dockside folk know he ventures out alone. They see the box, but none dare to ask why. Perhaps they fear trespassing on memories he has sealed away, or assume it's just a priceless keepsake for a lonely old man. But Emily Reed was not like them. She was more than curious. She wanted to understand her father. Many times Emily sat across from him, her eyes warm yet questioning. She did not demand explanations, only gently asked, "What's inside, Dad?" He did not evade. Matthew simply smiled, a smile laced with tenderness and an unnameable sorrow, and replied in the same soft voice, as though reminding himself, "When you're ready to face the truth, you'll open it yourself." That answer was neither refusal nor consent. It was a half-open door, waiting for someone brave enough to step through. Emily grew up with that question. She came of age alongside the unopened wooden box. For Matthew, time has only deepened its meaning. Every year, on November 8th at dawn, he set sail, never a minute late, never missing a single year. His weathered boat glides across the water toward the same point, whose coordinates only he knows. He never marks it on charts, nor shares it with anyone. That spot where he drops anchor each year has been erased from all military records, an empty stretch on every map, a blank no one mentions. But for him, it is the epicenter of memory, the site of Operation Black Phantom, a battle never acknowledged, a mission never permitted to exist. They once called it top secret, a dark operation so taboo every trace had to be obliterated. Yet no matter how many files they erased, no matter how many proofs they buried, they forgot one thing. Human memory cannot be burned away. Matthew remembers. He recalls each fallen comrade, each distress signal sent, each promise uttered in desperation. The black wooden box is not decoration. It holds a forgotten chapter of history. Inside there is no weapon, no classified document capable of shaking a nation. No, what he keeps is living memory. A handwritten campaign journal, its pages still tinged with sea salt, its lines soaked in sweat and tears. Beside the journal sits an old military radio, a device no one uses anymore. Yet Matthew never lets it fail. He cleans it daily, checks its frequencies, swaps its tiny batteries, even though he knows there's no one left listening. And one more thing. A faded, government-issued ID card marked with the insignia of a Navy SEAL unit officially declared non-existent. The government can erase a name. It can close a file. But how can they erase the lives and battles of those who lived and fought? Matthew keeps that card, not to prove who he is, but to remind himself of the debt still unpaid, an appointment he vowed to keep. Each time he touches the black box, he feels the weight of that vow. It is heavy not just in his hand, but in his soul. Some nights he wakes from restless dreams, old sounds echoing in his mind, the calls of comrades in hopelessness, the crackle of unanswered radio signals. He has never shared this with anyone. Not even Emily, his closest confidant, has heard him speak of it. Not because he sought to conceal, but because he feared that once the words escaped, the secret would no longer belong to him alone. For nearly 50 years, the black wooden box has journeyed with him like a silent companion, a witness to every unspoken truth. And Matthew Reed knows that the day he opens that box before another will be the day everything he has held all his life must be revealed. But until then, he will keep his vow intact, a pledge requiring no records, no witnesses, only the fidelity of a heart that never forgets. That morning, as every year, Matthew Reed quietly set his boat adrift into the murky mist. Echo's promise tilted gently with each stroke, as if by long-held ritual. On deck, the black wooden box lay motionless, weathered yet steadfast, its grain and worn cracks bearing the marks of time. Matthew needed no one to know his destination. He only needed to arrive at the right place, on the right day. This voyage was no different, yet he did not know that his silence was about to be broken. As the boat glided through familiar waters, the silhouette of a patrol vessel suddenly emerged, cutting across the haze. A Coast Guard ship, its paint cold, angular, and severe. Matthew looked up. No panic in his gaze, no surprise. He simply observed, as though he had long foreseen this day. But those aboard the patrol did not look at him so. They saw an intruder, an unauthorized stranger. On their deck, a young commander tightened his binoculars, brow furrowed, rapidly scanning a chart spattered with faint red lines. "Confirm, military exclusion zone. Target not permitted to pass." His voice rang out coldly, rigidly. They asked no questions, gave no chance for explanation. They paid no heed to his wind-tousled gray hair, nor to the bony hands lightly gripping the wheel. To them, he was only an old man trespassing, a lost soul to be stopped. The young commander gave the order. No hesitation, no second thought. A sharp, decisive ram directly into Echo's Promise's hull. Metal clanged harshly. The little boat shuddered violently as planks splintered under unequal force. Matthew pitched forward. His knee struck the slick deck with a jolt of pain. It hurt, but he made no sound. He neither resisted nor argued. They leapt aboard, heavy boots crushing the very wood he'd painstakingly preserved for decades. They hauled him up without mercy. Ropes coiled tight around his wrists as if binding a grave threat. Shouts erupted, urgent and fierce, as though they'd captured a national security menace. Matthew remained silent. He let them bind him, drag him across the water-soaked planks. Their actions were swift, trained for crisis response, but they did not know. They were wrong from the start. With a subtle motion, he bent quietly, shaking hand probing his worn jacket pocket. His finger found the small military radio he carried on every expedition. He activated it without hesitation. A brief signal sounded. 3 words, simple yet weighty. Mayday, Alpha Echo 47. He read the coordinates. Position, 38 to G58, N, 76 to G8, DU. That's all. A single call. One no one on the patrol ship realized he had sent. The young commander stood mere steps away. He heard the words, but not their meaning. Just the futile reaction of a stubborn old man. He sneered, arrogance dripping from his lips. He believed the story ended there. A trawler detained, a lone violator, a routine operation. But he did not know that his actions had unleashed an undercurrent he could not stop. A call had gone out. A chain, long thought broken, had been reconnected. And the one who would answer was not the Coast Guard. Matthew stayed silent, bound, dragged, humiliated. But in his heart, the ember kindled nearly half a century ago flared anew. He knew that once that signal was sent, someone would hear. The one he had waited for all these years. The one who had not forgotten him. The one who would come. The young commander could not have imagined that within an hour these waters would no longer belong to him, that another force would arrive, one needing no formal orders, one not there to rescue but to repay its debt to the old man he'd mistaken for a common intruder. Matthew needed say no more. He'd already spoken. Now he needed only to wait for those who heard the call, to wait for those who never forget an oath. Can you guess what happens next? Stay tuned and comment 1 if you're still here and want to follow the unfolding story. Not everyone has the right to send such a call, and not everyone is worthy of answering it. Exactly 1 hour later, the surface of Chesapeake Bay was no longer tranquil. The roar of MH-60S helicopter rotors shattered the air. The chopper sliced through the thick fog, barreling toward the Coast Guard cutter with no signal, no clearance, no warning. It had not come on a routine rescue mission. It came for one man, and one man only. Moments later, a covert SEAL team fast roped down with lethal precision. They carried no paperwork, carried no orders. They acted as though they had been waiting for this call for decades. The Coast Guardsmen had never seen speed like this. They were caught completely off guard. In an instant, the SEALs cut Matthew's bonds, hauled him upright, and formed a protective perimeter, movements so practiced and swift that no one could intervene. The Coast Guard was pushed aside. The patrol vessel became a bystander. The young Coast Guard commander froze in shock, bewildered as the SEALs stood before him. He could not fathom why these operators ignored every protocol he had ever learned. Before he could react, his eyes fell on the distinctive patch on their uniforms. He halted. A symbol he'd only ever seen in top-secret files, a phantom emblem that history itself had erased. Ghost Phantom. The name of a Navy SEAL unit officially expunged in 1975, a force absent from all records, a ghost buried beneath the dust of forgotten wars. Yet here they were today, flesh and blood, moving faster than any manual he'd ever studied. He was at a loss. He'd never been trained for this scenario. No order could guide him now. The SEALs paid no heed to his panic. They advanced as if these waters were theirs, protecting Matthew as though he were their leader. Each step was decisive, efficient, no questions asked. They already knew. They had heard the signal, and that was all they needed. The SEAL team commander, A man in his 50s strode deliberately toward Matthew. No hurry, no display of authority, only the quiet confidence of one who carries an unforgettable memory. He stopped before Matthew. No question of identity needed. He already knew. The man inclined his head in a slow, formal nod, a salute reserved for the most honored. No words were necessary. That gesture spoke volumes. He spoke only once, his voice low and steady, but not cold. "We heard your call." A simple sentence, yet weighted like an oath awakened after half a century. Matthew stood silently. He felt the ropes fall away, but felt even more keenly his heartbeat. An ember burning through 47 years at last answered. He had never expected them to arrive so swiftly, but he knew that once heard, they would not delay. They never do. He needed no words of thanks. Between them, words were redundant. The SEAL's eyes said it all. They came not by orders from above, but by his signal. They came because they never forgot the oath they once swore. Matthew pressed a hand to his chest, sensing his own pulse. Steady, persistent, never silent. His heart, frozen for nearly 50 years, now beat alive again in the sure footsteps of his old comrades. The young Coast Guard commander stood paralyzed. He had never been trained to comprehend such bonds. He thought he had detained a lonely old man, but in truth, he had touched an undercurrent the system had tried to forget. A signal had been sent, and the only ones authorized to hear it had come. No one commanded them to appear. They needed no command. They needed only the promise made long ago, a promise kept by hearts that never forget. On the deck of Echo's Promise, the SEAL team opened the black wooden box before Matthew. No one spoke a word. They moved with absolute reverence, as if handling a sacred relic. The lid creaked open, old and heavy. Inside, no weapons, no classified files capable of rocking a government. Yet to them, the contents were more valuable than all else. A thick journal lay within, its pages yellowed with age, yet the handwriting remained crisp and clear, as if penned only yesterday. Matthew stared at the notebook, his hands trembling. Inside lay the complete truth of Operation Black Phantom, a campaign history had deliberately buried. A roster of 9 Navy SEALs appeared before them. Those names existed in no official record. They had been crossed out, declared non-existent, erased from every national archive. But in this journal, they remained intact, vivid, each inked line still bearing the breath of those who fell. Beside the journal sat an antiquated military radio, a device only those of Ghost Phantom could decode. Its casing was tarnished, its finish worn to dull gray, yet Matthew never let it fail. He treated it as part of his own body. That radio was not for communicating with the world, but for reaching the only ones who could hear him. Finally, they saw the old ID card, its edges warped, its plastic clouded, yet the name Matthew Reed was still engraved. Below it, the Ghost Phantom insignia, a symbol no one in the military dared speak of. Before them stood not a solitary old man, but the final commander of a special ops unit buried beneath intentional silence. The SEAL commander carefully flipped through each page of the journal, his eyes scanning entries no one had read in nearly half a century. Every name, every coordinate, every note was treated as irrefutable proof. Matthew gazed at the notebook as though peering back at himself 47 years earlier. The friends he had lost, the promises made, the pleas for rescue no one heard, hopes fading amid the open sea, memories crashing over him like an unstoppable tide. No one urged him. No one broke the silence. They stood beside him, patient, respectful, as if they too bore the weight of the memories Matthew had carried alone for all these years. He had awaited this day, not for honor, not for forgiveness, but for one thing only: that his former teammates, or at least their successors, would hear his final call. Matthew knew well that some oaths need not be repeated because they were never forgotten. The old radio did not broadcast for governments. It broadcast for those who understood that certain debts cannot be settled by a mere strike from the records. He had once been their SEAL team commander, the sole survivor, the only one who knew it all. And he chose silence, not from fear, but because some truths must be kept until the right person appears at the right time. The SEAL commander gently closed the journal. His eyes shone with solemn weight, as though beholding comrades he had never met, the names once buried, now spoken again, those thought gone, now summoned home. Matthew needed no confirmation of the black box's worth. He had known its value long ago. The value of memory, the value of sacrifice, the value of an oath never to be forgotten. The commander placed the journal in Matthew's hands. No orders were given, no judgments made. They simply stood together, knowing it was enough. The signal had been sent. The answer had come. The secret was no longer secret. It had found its next guardian. Matthew offered a slow, deep nod, as though he had just laid down a burden that had pressed upon his shoulders for 47 years. No tears glistened in his eyes, only relief, only silent gratitude for those who had come without need of invitation. His final call had been heard, and for Matthew Reed, that was more than sufficient. After the shocking events in Chesapeake Bay, the story of Matthew Reed and the SEALs spread like wildfire. It surpassed invisible barriers, seeping into corners long meant to be forgotten. Military forums, veterans groups, those who'd kept silent for decades, now all spoke the name they'd believed erased. Ghost Phantom. Public pressure exploded. Old documents were unearthed, once top-secret files forced into the light. At last, the Department of Defense had to admit the truth. They could no longer deny it. Operation Black Phantom had existed, and the Ghost Phantom Task Force was never a myth. But Matthew cared nothing for this belated honor. He didn't want medals. He didn't want history rewritten. He asked only one simple thing: remember them, those who were never named. He did not speak of himself. He did not need remembrance. All he wished was that the fallen not be forgotten. They sacrificed in silence, and Matthew had kept his promise for nearly half a century. Each November 8th at Chesapeake Bay, a quiet ceremony is held. No trumpets, no drums, no television broadcast. Just an honor guard of SEALs lowering the flag to half-mast, a single whistle piercing the air like waves echoing back, like the call of the departed from across the sea. Emily Reed, Matthew's only daughter, was finally allowed to open the black box she'd long awaited throughout childhood and adulthood. Inside, no national secrets, no war maps or classified dossiers, only the journals soaked in fragmented entries, secret coordinates, seemingly trivial details that held the soul of a forgotten force. Some pages still bore tears, some lines scrawled in haste, as though recorded amid a hail of bullets. Emily turned to the final page, where her father had left a message. Daughter, the past is a burden, but memory is glory. If anyone asks, tell them, your father kept his word. Simple words, yet heavy as stone. A message not just for her, but for everyone who'd ever forgotten. Emily understood. All these years she'd blamed him for his silence, assuming he was lonely. Now she knew he was never alone. He had been keeping a promise to those the world had forsaken. Matthew was absent from the recognition ceremony. He didn't need to witness it. He returned to Echo's promise, the weathered boat that had carried him through so many years. Battered, but steadfast, like himself. He quietly rode into the morning mist, where his old comrades, though gone, still waited for him. He spoke no farewell. None was needed. Soldiers never say goodbye. They simply carry on, even when the road ends for others. On the tranquil sea, only the soft lap of waves against the hull remained, the silent heartbeat of a soldier who'd fulfilled his oath after the storm, a heartbeat that had lain dormant almost 50 years, now throbbing once more as the final affirmation. He had kept his word. Matthew understood that some victories require no celebration. Some battles never make the history books. But above all, memory matters. While there are those who remember, those sacrifices are never in vain. Emily stood at the dock, watching her father's silhouette fade into the mist. She knew he would not return, but she also knew he had found where he belonged. Matthew Reed's story is not just a personal memory. It is a reminder to us all. Do not let those who sacrificed for us be forgotten. Do not let silence become the tomb of truth. And never judge a man by his solitary exterior, for behind it may stand an entire silent force that never truly left him. If this story touches your heart, let us know where and when you're watching. And if you're reading these words, comment, "I'm still here." Share this tale with your friends and family across the United States, so together we can spread memories that were never told. Don't forget to subscribe so we can continue this journey. Continue listening to stories as profound and humane as this one. We're so glad you're here with us.